I think one of the strangest things that's really happened over the last decade is that having a normal job somehow became something that people really are just embarrassed to admit. Somewhere in the last, 10 years, the internet convinced people that if you're working a regular 9 to 5, you're really just doing life wrong. If you open up YouTube, maybe TikTok, Instagram, or pretty much any other social media platform, you'll find people telling you that you need, quit your job, start a business, make passive income, and become financially free really before you're 30. If you listen to, enough of that content, it starts to really get into your head. I began listening to this content a lot, especially in my younger years, and I really started to ask myself some questions that honestly I never thought of before. Like, am I behind? Am I wasting my potential? Should I be doing more? And other questions, which in general are good questions to ask. The crazy part is that a lot of people asking these questions are actually doing perfectly fine. You're paying your bills, you're supporting yourself, you're saving money. Overall, you're making progress. But because their life doesn't look like a highlight reel that they're seeing online, they start believing they're failing. Another thing that really no one seems to be willing to admit is not everyone is meant to run a business. And really, that's completely okay. Social media really has turned entrepreneurship into the ultimate status symbol. If you're not building a startup, launching a side hustle, or trying to become your own boss, people make it seem like you're really just settling for less. The truth is, social media has created a very distorted version of success. The people who get the most attention online are usually the loudest voices, not necessarily the smartest or happiest ones. Most of us are comparing our everyday lives to carefully edited moments from complete strangers on the internet. We don't know what their finances look like. We don't know if they're actually successful. We don't know how much debt they're carrying, how stressed they are, or whether the lifestyle they're showing is really even real. Yet somehow we as humans allow these people to influence how we feel about our own lives. It's just crazy to me. A person with a stable income, health insurance, retirement, savings, maybe even a roof over their head can watch a 30-second video and really just suddenly feel like they're losing at life and get depressed over it. When you really stop and think about it, it's honestly insane. But running a business is really just incredibly difficult. When you own a business, there's no guaranteed paycheck, no clocking out at 5 o'clock and leaving work behind. And there's probably nights where you're answering emails at midnight. Weekends are spent trying to solve problems, and months where you're wondering if building is actually going to work. People see the freedom that comes along with owning a business, but they honestly rarely see the pressure. They don't see the financial risk. They don't see the stress of having employees depend on you. They don't see the uncertainty that comes with not knowing exactly how much money you'll make month in and month out. The truth is honestly, some people just enjoy that challenge. They thrive in that environment, and they're willing to, take on the risk of building something because they want to build something on their own. But not everyone, I think, is wired that way. Some people, I think, would rather have stability than uncertainty. Some people would rather know exactly what their schedule looks like every week. They'd rather spend their evenings with family than worrying about business decisions. There's really absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is forcing themselves into entrepreneurship because they think that's what successful people are supposed to do. But success isn't about owning a business. I think it's really just building a life that works for you. For some people, that's entrepreneurship. For others, it's a career they're good at, a steady paycheck, weekends off, and enough time to enjoy the things that matters most. Neither path is better than the other. They're just different. And I think a lot of people would be happier if they stopped trying to live someone else's version of success and started building their own. Stability isn't exciting. Nobody really makes a viral video about paying their bills on time. And nobody posts motivational reels about contributing to a retirement account from, a 9 to 5. Nobody gets millions of views from talking about having health insurance or building an emergency fund. But really, those things matter. In fact, I think they matter a lot more than most people realize, especially, at a younger age. Financial stability gives you options. It allows you to think clearly. It allows you to plan for the future. And it gives you breathing room whenever life inevitably throws challenges your way. The problem is, stability is just boring, and boring doesn't perform well on social media. The algorithms don't, pay attention to stability. The risk gets the attention. Flashy lifestyles get attention, luxury cars get attention, but stability really is what contributes to a genuinely good life. And I mentioned this in the last video, but something that really just gets left out of these conversations is the fact that most people really didn't start out successful. They started out exactly where everyone else starts. You and I, they worked jobs, they had bosses, they clocked in every day. They learned skills, gained experience, and they figured out how to communicate, solve problems, and handle responsibility. We hear stories about successful entrepreneurs all the time. People conveniently skip over the years that they've spent working a regular job. Success didn't happen overnight. The job wasn't holding them back, and in many cases, really the job was preparing them. The discipline they developed, skills they learned, and really the experience they gained all became valuable later. A lot of people talk about jobs as if they're maybe some kind of like prison sentence, in my opinion. But for many people, including myself, a job is simply just a stepping stone. It's a way to build skills, maybe gain experience, meet people, and create opportunities that might not exist otherwise. I also think we've really just reached a point where people tie too much of their identity to what they do for work. One of the first questions people ask when they meet someone is, what do you do? Not what do you enjoy? Not what people are passionate about, not what matters most to you, just really what you do for work. And because of that, many people start believing that their job title determines their worth. If they didn't have an impressive career, maybe they feel like they aren't impressive people. That's really just not the case. You can be a creator, maybe a musician, a photographer, a parent, athlete, many other things outside of your profession. The moment you stop allowing your career to define your entire identity is the moment you start seeing life in a healthier way. I think the internet also gets the idea of freedom wrong. Everyone talks about freedom as if it means the same exact thing for really every person, but it doesn't. For other people, maybe freedom means owning a business. For the other person, maybe it means having a predictable schedule and knowing they'll be home every evening. For someone else, freedom may mean having weekends with their family. The entrepreneur working 80-hour weeks might look successful from the outside, but maybe they're really just constantly stressed. Maybe they haven't taken a real vacation in years. And meanwhile, someone with a regular 9 to 5 might have the evenings free, weekends free, and enough income to really just enjoy life. Which one do you think is more successful? The answer really just depends entirely on the person themselves. That's why comparing your version of success to someone else's really just is a dangerous game, because everyone values things differently. And I don't really want people to get confused, honestly. Like, none of this commentary means that you shouldn't have goals. If you want to start a business, really just go for it, honestly, and I'll back you 100%. If you want to create content, learn new skills, maybe pursue a different career, it's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting more out of life. I think the problem begins where people start hating who you are or where you're at because you're so focused on where you want to be. Too many people spend years really just feeling miserable because they can't appreciate the stage of life they're currently in, myself included. They're constantly waiting for the next milestone. You might tell yourself that you'll finally be happy when you make money, get promoted, maybe quit your job, or achieve another goal, but life really doesn't suddenly begin when those things happen. Life is happening right now as you're sitting here. If you can't appreciate the journey, reaching the destination won't magically fix that. Sometimes your 9 to 5 is really actually the thing that makes your dreams possible. It's paying for the equipment, funding side projects, allowing you to save money, many other things. It's really just, in general, giving you the resources to build something bigger in the future. I think instead of seeing your job as the thing standing in your way, maybe it's worth looking at as the thing helping you get to where you want to go. A lot of successful businesses, YouTube channels, and creative projects were built during evenings, weekends, while someone was still working at a regular job. Really no shame in that. In fact, it's probably the smarter path than taking a huge risk without any financial foundation. At the end of the day, I think really most people just want simpler things than the internet would have us believe. Most people don't actually need private jets, luxury cars, millions of followers. What they really want is really just security. They want a comfortable home. They want enough money to enjoy life. They want meaningful relationships. They want freedom from constant stress, peace of mind. And really, there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. Somewhere along the way, I think we've just started treating an ordinary life as it's something to avoid. An ordinary life really can be a beautiful life. A life where your bills are paid, relationships are strong, and you're steadily moving forward is something a lot of people would be grateful to have. So I think, if you're watching this and you're working a regular 9 to 5, I don't think you should let social media convince you that you're behind. Don't let strangers that you have no idea who they are online decide what success should look like for you. You shouldn't feel guilty for building a stable future. Success isn't about, impressing random people on the internet. It's about creating a life that works for you. It's about waking up every day, knowing you're making progress, and even if that progress is slow, at the end of the day, you're still making it. If a 9 to 5 job really helps you build that life, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, maybe that's exactly what you need and something more people should hear.